the DFC, finding value plays on Jason Gilbo, J Gilbo 11. Got an 8-game slate tonight, maybe 9 games you're playing over on FanDuel, which includes the Cleveland and Houston game. DraftKings does not, so that starts at 7. If you're playing on FanDuel, lock time is at 6, so be sure to remember that. Decent amount of high totals tonight. I mean, we're looking at a game out in Portland here, 227, 4.5-point spread. I mean, 227, I mean, I'm going to definitely want to get some exposure to that one. Lillard, Durant, Curry, Green, I mean, all those guys are in phenomenal spots. So that really should be your top one of the night. I mean, looking elsewhere, obviously Indiana and Los Angeles is in a good spot, 216. That Cleveland-Houston game is a good one to target if you are playing in FanDuel. It's a contrarian move. So the one I'm staying away from tonight is Spurs and Jazz, 187 total. San Antonio is 10.5-point favorites. They're at home. Likely a blowout situation. Guys likely to not play a ton of minutes. I think on a slate like tonight, I think all their ceilings are pretty much capped. So I'll definitely be looking over elsewhere and kind of glossing over that game. But looking for value, I mean, this is something where we're going to need it tonight. Obviously, Anthony Davis going up against the Bucks. I mean, you want to have some exposure there, but you're also looking at a game out in Portland where there's just a ton of high-priced guys you want to go out and get. So definitely going to be diving down tonight. We'll look at point guard first. Obviously, the injury news to Ricky Rubio is going to have rookie Chris Dunn step up into play. Tough individual matchup with Mike Conley. I don't mind taking a shot on it for value because we really don't have a ton of injury value right now. That's fresh. Obviously, we have some guys that's been injured, but sites have adjusted a little bit. So Chris Dunn, obviously a talented first-round pick, top 5 pick for Minnesota there. Has been playing right around 17, 18 minutes in his first couple games. Not doing a whole ton, but obviously this is a matchup, against Memphis where there's still a 102, implied total. I don't think Memphis is as strong as they used to be, but I still do tend to shy away from Mike Conley just a little bit. I still don't mind Chris Dunn tonight because of the value. DVP looks like it's pretty middle of the road here early on. So I don't mind taking a shot there. Intriguing. Curious to see if Zach LaVine holds a lot of the ball handling duties there. That could be a possibility as well. So I might look to him a little bit more too if I am going with that Minnesota backcourt. Outside of that, I mean, you do have Sergio Rodriguez for Philly. 4,700 on DK, 5,100 on FanDuel. Been playing really well. Great matchup against Elfrid Payton and the Orlando Magic. I certainly don't mind him tonight for value. I don't mind that game. It is pretty intriguing in terms of kind of value pieces. Outside of that, we got Tim Frazier, looking at 5,500 there on FanDuel, 5,900 on DK. This is a guy who is playing heavy minutes. Into the mid-30s, doing pretty well. Matchup with Milwaukee, a little bit tougher with the size, but I actually don't mind Frazier there because of that total. FanDuel's still a relatively low price for him. They haven't really adjusted. 5,900, starting to come up on DK, but when you compare him to the other point guards, it's still pretty cheap. Ish Smith is the other one. Elfrid Payton, they kind of sit in that same range, 5,900, 6K on FanDuel, 54, 56 on DK. So I don't mind tossing some shots in there. Both pretty good matchups. Obviously, Elfrid Payton has the better matchup there. So both intriguing kind of mid-range values to look at. I think those guys are kind of going to be the ones I sit into that mid-range with and pair them with kind of a high, price guy like a Lillard tonight you can look at. So that's going to be the route I'm heading. Then we kind of cut off into the tier of, all right, they're not really values anymore. It's going to be quite expensive to get some of these guys. So I think you sit in that low range. And obviously you're going to be looking at guys like Lillard, Curry tonight. Even Irving, I don't mind on FanDuel. So all kind of intriguing guys to take a look at. Shooting guard, we're looking at really a lot of punt plays that I'm not particularly thrilled about. I'm going to be trying to punt as less as possible here. I think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's an interesting one. 4,500 on FanDuel, 4,600 on DK. This is a guy who, not a particularly good scorer. We've seen him come off and have some good games before, but obviously the floor is a little bit lower. The good thing is he does, eat into some minutes, which he does need all of them to kind of hit value. at those prices, I don't mind taking a shot on him, especially on tonight's slate, because shooting guard's not really the first place you're going to be looking to spend up. It is going to be for Durant, it is going to be for Davis, it is going to be a point guard. So, shooting guard is a good place to go dive down at. And I don't mind Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in this matchup against the Knicks. It is a little slower paced game, but you look at the Pistons still over 100 team total here early on, so I don't mind that. Outside of that, though, I mean, we're looking at guys here in tougher matchups. I mean, not really a fan of Rodney Hood at that price going up against the Spurs. We have yet to really seen Aaron Aflalo get involved. Courtney Lee, those types of guys. Kyle Anderson. You're not particularly thrilled about rostering those guys tonight. So, outside of that, Etuan Moore is an interesting one. 4,400 on FanDuel, 4K on DraftKings. Obviously, he's a guy who, was banged up heading into the year, starting to pick up a little bit more minutes, playing right around 25. Could see him get up to 28, 30. I don't mind him. Obviously, he's a secondary scoring option behind Davis and Frazier. So, usage isn't going to be tremendously high, but this is a guy who, can't get hot from three. We saw it last year with the Bulls. Would be an interesting value play. I think he could open up quite a bit. Outside of that, though, I'm not really diving down, into guys like Aaron Aflalo, Courtney Lee, that type of range. I'm trying to stick with really those two guys only. So, Zach LaVine, he's a guy who is under 6K on both sides. We kind of dive up a little bit with Ricky Rubio out. Curious to see if he does handle a little bit more of the ball handling there in the backcourt. I certainly don't mind him. He is a guy, when he gets hot shooting the ball, this is a guy who can score 25, 30 points. We've seen it. The peripheral stats, not quite always there. Once again, it is a bit tougher matchup against Memphis. But, with the value there, I'm not quite shying away from it, especially on this slate where we are going to need some. Small forward, James Ennis is a guy I'm still looking at in that same Memphis-Minnesota game. He's been playing really well, averaging right around 23, 24 FanDuel points per game. He's a guy who's filling in for Chandler Parsons. Price still isn't too bad. 4,400 on FanDuel, 4,600 on DK. Just kind of a nice kind of plug and play at small forward. I think you can kind of still roll with that in this matchup and feel pretty safe about it. Outside of that, though, small forward, pretty weak. Justice Winslow is an intriguing option. He's been playing pretty well for the Heat. Obviously, with no Wade, no more Walt Dang. We've seen him come in and play pretty well so far this season. Obviously, it's a great matchup against the Kings. Not a good defensive team there. And this is a guy who's playing about 35 minutes a game right now. And 5K on FanDuel, really nice price, 5,200 on DK. I don't mind that at all. So I'll be looking at him and kind of fill things out. Outside of that, small forward is pretty weak in terms of value tonight. And I think with Durant there, you can use Durant, you can use James Ennis, you can use Justice Winslow. I think that's kind of where I'm leaning towards with my three. Not really looking to go down the mid-range and kind of pay for those guys tonight because I just think it's either go up or go down, with Durant right there in this type of matchup. So power forward tonight, this one's, you got a couple mid-range guys I don't mind. A lot of 5K guys in FanDuel you can take a look at, like Serge Ibaka against Philly. Gortai Dang has been very solid to start out the year. I don't mind him at that FanDuel price, 5,900. 6,200 on DK is kind of more appropriately priced, but obviously keep an eye on that. Thaddeus Young, great mid-range power forward option tonight. Gets a friendly matchup against the Lakers. 5,700 on DK, 6,100 on FanDuel, certainly reasonable. If you want to dive down, I think that Memphis game, I keep going back there for value tonight. JaMychal Green, 4,700 on FanDuel, 4,600 on DK, is certainly playable on tonight's slate just because, we don't want to get too much exposure to that game in terms of value and plugging in three different value plays from that one. But I think one or two and kind of mix and match and go elsewhere with your guys because there's obviously the Orlando-Philly game that's certainly in play as well for value. So keep that in mind. But that's really the direction I'm heading just because of the injuries that are kind of in place in that one. But back to power forward here. This one, Ryan Anderson is kind of an intriguing play for me on the FanDuel slate at 5,300. Has struggled a little bit, but I'm looking at that game, and I think he could be an interesting GPP play. 114 total there. Obviously, 6 o'clock start, 5,300. Anderson really hasn't gotten a ton going. But playing 30 minutes a game, this is a guy, gets hot, is going to score quite a bit. We'll see, Kevin Love, not a terrific defender. He is playing pretty well this year, but not a guy to shy away from. So at that price, I might take a stab at it in GPPs. I think he's a guy worth a look still. Looking at center tonight, and I mean, we have a couple of options. I wish some of these guys were getting bigger minutes. Obviously, Zaza Pachulia is very cheap. If he was getting, in the high 20s, mid to high 20s, I'd be looking at him in this matchup, but I don't think you can. On the other side of things with Mason Plumlee, though, foul trouble, he's going to be fine tonight. I'm looking at that game. I think he can rebound a ton. 4,900 on FanDuel, 4,600 on DK. It's the foul trouble. If he stays out of foul trouble, he's going to be a safe option. Golden State hasn't been great against centers so far this year. Plumlee's a guy who isn't going to score a ton, 8 to 10 real points, but he's a guy who can rack up a couple steals, a couple blocks. Also looking at him to pretty much rebound a ton, especially with the pace of play in that game alone. So he is an intriguing option. I don't mind him tonight. Another guy more so on FanDuel here, and basically Joel Embiid has been a fantasy points per minute monster so far to start his career, but we haven't quite seen the minutes, obviously, with the injury situation. He is expected to play tonight, but it's a matter of how much. Keep an eye on those reports because he's been putting up about 25 FanDuel points in basically 18 minutes of play, 17 minutes of play. So he is an intriguing option against this front court of Orlando that I'm still not a fan of. I'm still going to be targeting against. He'd be kind of a sneaky play. I mean, if he gets those 25 points, if he even goes up for a 30 and just has a monster game somehow and does the high fantasy points per minute like we saw guys in Denver do last year, at 4,500 he gets that's hitting nice value and really opening up some salary. So definitely a GPP move. I'd be quite intrigued because that kind of allows you to get another superstar for tonight's slate. Outside that, you do have some cheaper guys on, DraftKings, the Gasol brothers, both 6K. I think they're intriguing options, more so Mark. Outside of that, though, you're not looking at a ton of other guys here that you can really plug and play in the greatest matchups. Clint Capella isn't a tough one. Joakim Noah really hasn't done a whole lot, not playing a lot of minutes. So we're obviously looking at that. One guy I do want to mention, he's not quite value, but I think he could be one of the higher scoring ones, in the league is Miles Turner. 7,100 on FanDuel, 7,300 on DK. Quite the discount from guys like Drummond, Whiteside, Towns, Cousins tonight. I might make a pivot down to him. So when looking at the value of the top centers, I certainly don't mind him tonight. And he'd be a guy to kind of keep an eye on. So let's wrap things up with the DFC Finding Value. Be sure to head on over to dayfantasycafe.com. Check out our great cheat sheets that are come up later today. If you like what we're doing on these podcasts as well, be sure to give us a subscribe and a thumbs up.